Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Breathe Better podcast. So in this episode it might be a little bit shorter, but I just want to focus on one thing in particular, and I'm going to try my very best to stick to that as best as I can. And we all know how much I struggle with that. So the main thing I want to talk about here is one of the Yamas, which is non-violence. Ahimsa. And this has been misconstrued, I believe, and misinterpreted a little bit nowadays to sort of enable a bit of a standing back, a bit of bystander syndrome, like someone else will deal with it. So if, for example, if you see someone like getting shouted at on the street, or you see someone, I know these are quite extreme examples, but you see someone getting bullied, or you see someone getting attacked, for example, do you just take a step back and someone else will deal with it, I'm non-violent, so I'm not going to get involved? Or do you see an act of injustice and think there's something I can do about that, as long as it's safe, of course, but you see an act of injustice and you act on it? So you're an advocate for non-violence. Does that make sense? So as much as we're seeing violence and we don't want it to happen, we're not just going to stand back and say no. I'm not getting involved, nothing to do with me, but we're going to actually actively work towards resolving this act of injustice, so to speak. So nowadays, of course, at this time, there is war everywhere over the world. There's acts of genocide happening in Palestine. Okay? And it is our duty as people who are in a privileged position where we are not immediately affected by this yet. Hopefully we won't be. But in general, we are not immediately affected by this violence. We're not immediately affected by this war, this genocide. We're not affected by the famine, the disease, the lack of shelter, the general mistreatment. They have been treated essentially as less than even any living thing. They're just dirt on the bottom of someone's shoe, and it's fucking disgusting. So the main thing I want to talk about in this episode is Ahimsa, and how we should be, within every little bit of power within ourselves, advocating for peace with this. So not just sitting in our house, not watching the telly and not watching the news because it's too brutal. That is a continuation. We're enabling it all to happen. Obviously we're not actively attacking people or causing suffering, but we are perpetuating it by looking away. We need to look at it. We need to see these people suffering, and we need to act on it to the best of our ability. If it's sending a fucking letter to your MP, if it's sharing something on social media, it is not just turning away and turning the telly off. We need to be a voice for the people who don't have one. And I so strongly believe in this. This is basic humanity 101, Not just let people get abused and violated and assaulted and attacked and killed and murdered and blown up. You can't just stand by and watch that. Have a bit of humanity. And I'm not saying you need to become a humanitarian and jump across the world, but you need to at least have a voice about it, and at least act on behalf of these people. Yeah, so this is where Ahimsa comes in, this act of non-violence. Yeah. So from what I'm saying, obviously you can get an understanding of where I'm trying to come from, but it's so important. It is so important. As much as we need to not be harming any creature or any living thing, we still need to carry out our duty as humans, as people. And we need to look out for each other. Yeah? And you can take it very extreme, especially in the yoga context. I think it's quite easy to misinterpret Ahimsa for not harming any living thing whatsoever. And of course, I totally believe that. But We can't just sit back, we can't just sit back and watch this happen in any way. So as much as Ahimsa is talking about non-violence, we need to be advocates for peace. We need to be advocates for justice, not just standing back and watching injustice happen and let it happen. This happens in the street, and it not necessarily all the time. It definitely doesn't happen in the street all the time. But we need to be thinking about how we're showing up in the world at this moment in time. And unfortunately, it's just the world's in that much of a shitty state that this is something we need to be thinking about. And you can translate this into many different topics. Non-violence also can be related to yourself. The communication that you have with yourself, how you talk to yourself, how you talk to your partner, how you talk to your colleagues, everything. It's not just about physical acts of violence, it's about words. It's about the words that we choose to use in people. It's just, yeah. So as I say, this will be a lot shorter episode, but the main thing I want to get across within this, and I'm sorry if this has been quite a sort of alarming, I guess, podcast episode, but it's just, this is something I really feel passionate about, is that we need to act on injustice, not just stand by and let it happen. Yeah, and within this terms of the Palestinian genocide that's happening at the moment, I will be posting some resources and links below, and sharing some sharing an Instagram page, which I found has been very helpful for educating myself as well. Yeah, so that's really important within this as well. It's not just allowing the suffering to happen unnoticed, and to think about how long it's been going on for. And I know it can be really difficult to not get completely absorbed and really bogged down with all the details and bogged down with all the suffering, and to take that suffering on ourselves. But we need to at least keep our eyes open and witness the atrocities that are happening. And people need to be held accountable. Yeah? Of course, there's always different sides to stories, and it's hard to find the right actual information. But this is why we need to get information from as many different sources as possible. And if you can, go to a protest. Educate yourself. Listen to people's stories. Bear witness to their pain, at the very least. And at the very, very, very least, educate yourself on what's happening. So yeah, I'm not going to get too much into detail here, but as I say, I'll leave some resources below. And just keep Ahimsa in your mind, this act of non-violence. Yeah. Stand up for yourself. Stand up for your fellow humans. Stand up for your fellow people. Don't just allow things to go on because it doesn't immediately affect you. Because trust me, in the collective, it will affect you. In some way or another, it will affect you. The ripples of karmic actions will affect you in some way or another. And it's also not about being that, I don't want to say self-centered, because that's a bit extreme, but not have, how do I even word this? Let me think. A bit of empathy, a bit of compassion for people. Let's try and cultivate some of that, It doesn't always have to boil down to, well, it doesn't affect me, so have a bit of fucking empathy, Have a bit of compassion and educate yourself on whatever it is. But in this instance, this is what I'm talking about in relation to the Palestinian genocide, because that's what it is, an ethnic cleansing. Okay, now I do feel very passionately about this, and that's why I've dedicated this episode to it, and Ahimsa, of course, in the context of yoga, because I had to tie it into yoga in some way or another. But yeah, non-violence, ponder it, read up on it, think about it, think about how your actions will cause reactions. How do your actions cause ripple effects? How does you standing by and not doing anything do anything helpful, except for yourself. Yeah? If we're in a position of privilege to be able to not have to worry about these things, then we need to have a think about how we can help. How we can, help in any way, shape or form. If it's fundraising or whatever. Any of the things that I've spoken about so far. And just, let's bear witness. Let's not turn a blind eye. It's too easy nowadays to just turn the telly off and close the newspaper and not pick up your phone and just unfollow all these things on Instagram and Facebook that you don't like because it's unsettling. It's fucking unsettling. But we don't have to live it. We don't have to be directly experiencing it. So let's try and help the people who are experiencing it. So bottom line, let's have a bit more humanity. Yeah, let's have a bit more compassion and empathy and a bit more or a bit less. I'm just going to leave it there. Okay, so thanks very much for listening, and I'm sorry if this has been a troubling episode for you. But this is important. Ahimsa is important. Justice is important. Not just standing by and watching things unfold. That's really not the right thing that we should be doing. And I get that everyone has their own stuff to be doing, and their own lives, and their own problems, and their own traumas, and anxieties, and this and that, and this and that. But we're all equals. So let's act like it. Let's extend a hand. In whatever way, metaphorically, that is. So thanks for listening. And you will hear my voice again soon. Have a wonderful day.